What on earth is Konami doing with eFootball? It blows my mind. So, I want to show you a series of 3 games. You see my opponent's team, you're about to see my team, and this is a series of 3 games in Division 2 headed to Division 1. If you haven't been following my journey, I come over from FC 26, I gave it a go, and once again EA Sports failed the player base. The game is not football at all. Largely in the past several years, the game hasn't been about at least true football. But we're not getting into that. What we're getting into and how it relates is the fact that eFootball has all the ingredients to be the best football game by far. And for some reason, Konami just can't recognize it. Or they recognize it, but they think that with the game how it is, they're going to make more money. Because it always comes down to more money. That's the bottom line. So I want to use these games as an indicator as to what's going on, what's wrong with eFootball, where it's doing great things as a game, right, where Konami deserves credit, and why we might think that Konami feels that they won't make more money by fixing the nonsense that is holding this game back. So each of these games are against top-ranked Division 1 opponents. That has been the common theme in like the week that I've been back to eFootball. I've put in a ton of work, right? And before I came back for this, it's been less than a week, but just let's round it up to a week. Before I came back and started creating content, I spent a good amount of time offline just digging into not only eFootball, but UFL and FC because I really wanted to get down to the nitty gritty, for lack of a better term, as to what the best football game is. The reason for that is because these games all have terrible things, that's for sure, right? But they each have good parts too. Even as bad as UFL is, they have some good things that could contribute, I should say, to like the best football game in what aspects of each game could make the best football game. But easily the most important part is on the pitch and that true to football feel, and easily eFootball has that, right? I call it the magic because growing up, you had this certain feeling playing football on the sticks that connected you to not only real life football, but to real life football playing as your favorite players in the world, the best players in the world. These games, especially nowadays with all of the advancements, do such a good job of allowing your football knowledge, your skill in football to translate onto the sticks, but at a much higher level than you're capable of, right? Like, we as players couldn't do the things that a Hullet, a Pele, a Cruyff, a Baggio, whoever can do, but with our knowledge and using these players and their abilities in the game, that creates your skill as a football player on the sticks. And then with eFootball, you add in the brilliance of the tactical side of the game. No other game has brought that in. Now, EA Sports clearly thought, oh, that's too boring. Nobody wants to sit there and make adjustments and build players, and they're completely wrong. That is a big part of football. The fact that not only can you make adjustments tactically that are extremely detailed, but you can also build players in different ways. Like if I want Hullet to be more attacking, I can build him more attacking. If I want him to be more defensive, I build him more defensive. If I wanted to turn Hullet into a wing mid or a wing back, then I could rebuild him to be an excellent wing mid or wing back. That's the beautiful part. The players have a certain amount of points that you can put into different areas. Now there's a minimum in each of these areas for the players, so you can't just turn, for instance, Pele into a wing back or center back, right? But you can change these players to where realistically, right, that player in real life could have played that position. That stuff is brilliant, and it makes up, and to some extent, for the lack of game modes, because you can spend a lot of time building players, right, tuning your tactics to exactly how you want to play. That stuff's all beautiful. And then you get into the negatives, things like the gambling system, not only for players, which is ridiculous and the cost is ridiculous, but also for things like boosters, skills, position changes, the way that you can't just spend a certain amount of GP, in-game currency, or earn a certain position change or skill or whatnot, and it's always a gamble. That part is silly, right? And that's just the story of Konami. They'll do these amazing things, including some amazing aspects of the gameplay, and then they add complete nonsense. The biggest of which in the history of the franchise is without a doubt Smart Assist. Now, you can have games like you see here in which I've pulled it off 3-2, but this stat line was even worse than it says right there. Meaning it should have been 6-7 at most to 1. And this again is a top ranked player, but that's not even the biggest part, right? The biggest part is he was only able to stay in the game, and many times that game could have been the other way. He could have won with those stats because of Smart Assist, because the AI, and it's not only with Smart Assist, the defensive system is AI driven. So many aspects are taken from the skill of the player and put into the AI's hands that lower level players can get to these high ranks, right? In each of these games, you're going to be scratching your head going, how is that player top 100, top 1,000, top 5,000, right? Many of these players, if they were to play FC, for instance, would be lower division players. Now, 100% FC is glorified like football on skates. It has very little to do with football, but one thing they do have is manual control. Much better manual control. So I say these players wouldn't be at high levels over there because they rely so heavily on AI assistance. Like as you go into this second game, I want you to realize, yes, I out-teamed this player by a long shot. But put that aside and understand the fact that it doesn't mean anything because of Smart Assist. And not only Smart Assist, with that player's setup, he is going for one big thing, which is diagonal through balls from the outside to the center. And you're going to see he is very effective with them because they're all but automatic. So you could be outplaying a player, doing much better, trying to play the game of football, and yet an opponent can turn on Smart Assist, spam either crosses or these diagonal through balls, and they'll get ahead in the game. And in many cases, they can pull off victories just by having this type of AI assistance, and you're going to be the much better player. Now, in this particular game, right, I show exactly how ridiculous it is. I'm trying to play football. I score quickly. The opponent, of course, gets 2 ratty goals from the combination, basically from AI's help, right, that they should not have because they couldn't create goals themselves. Once they go up 2-1 and start just clearing and clearing and clearing, I wanted to make a statement, as I do with many of these rats, and so as I did with another top player that I played on stream, in one of my only shots on goal, he absolutely whooped me. Didn't play the best football. I'd have to watch it back to see if he was better than I thought. But either way, I ended with a tie, and I did the exact same thing that this player did, and I ended up doing in this game just to get a tie. Now, this game, I should have won. It should have never came down to me having to do this. But if you're down, you simply throw a bunch of forwards across the front line. You turn the press on with either single or a double red line, but single is good enough so you don't pull your players too out of position. And then you simply use the overpowered press defensively to constantly tackle players before they can pass the ball away, and you spam through balls. What it will lead to is at least a few goals. Now, because defensively there's so much AI assistance, you can ride this to victories, especially against players who try to play football. I can't tell you how many times where I refused to do the rat nonsense. And despite clearly being the better player, clearly outplaying my opponent, earning shot after shot, right, keeping possession, and doing the things that you would expect from a football game, I would lose because my opponent did whatever nonsense thing that they had to do to win the game, right? So the problem with that is this. If you start playing that way, this game gets just as empty as FC. Despite the ability to play football, it gets just as empty because you're not playing football. Now, on the other end, if you don't at least answer to these rats in some way, shape, or form, similar to how they are playing, to at least deal with them, score a few extra goals to cancel out their ratty nonsense. If you don't do that, then as a competitor, the game gets old because you're not going to be able to win the games you need to in order to get to the level you want, right? And that's where Konami is destroying this game, and there's no doubt they have to know this, right? So you see exactly what I'm talking about now. I'm playing football. I'm trying to do the right thing. My opponent goes down. despite being terrible and scores 2 goals. Smart assisted, automatic through ball, nonsense. So guess what I do? I answer in the same way. Now, even though I do this and get a million shots, I end up only with a tie in this game. But at least I didn't take the loss, didn't drop too much, and I move on to the next game. If there was only a few rats in eFootball as a whole, then this wouldn't be that big of an issue. You'd only have to face it every once in a while. You just charge it to the game and move on. The problem is, a vast majority of eFootball players do exactly what this opponent's doing. And so it puts you in a terrible spot. You can do all the football playing you want, but at the end of the day, without a doubt, you are going to face rats that will find success. And that is 100% on Konami for putting this crap into the game to let these players use it. If it's in there, you know rats exist and they're going to use this stuff. Konami has built a masterpiece and then essentially poured shit all over it. Excuse my language, but that's what they did, right? And you can also say shame on the players if you don't want to put 100% on Konami, but the reason why I say that is because it's their masterpiece that they created. Now, we pay a good amount of money. When anybody who says this game's free is crazy, right? Because of the cost to get these special players that many players want, right? We all want to use the Hullets, the Ibras, the Peles, the Baggios, the Cruyffs, the special Van Dijk, so on and on and on. And to do that, you're going to have to put money in, right? No matter how much you try to save, you're not going to get the top players, especially not a team full of the top players or teams that where you can fill your event squads full of top players. You're not going to get that if you don't put money in, and players do, including myself, and that's fine, right? I think it's crazy the cost, just like a lot of things nowadays, but if you decide to spend your money that way, you decide to spend your money. The problem, though, seems to be that Konami, as they get all this money, connects all these players paying to liking all of the AI assistants, liking all of this crap that allows non-skilled players to get to the top. Now, typically these development companies are very good at collecting data and building a game that gets players playing their game and keeps them playing. So they have to know something, right? And if that's the case, that they sacrifice what would be a masterpiece for greed, because they no doubt still be a rich and successful company, no doubt with how good eFootball is, it would succeed and they would make money, right? It wouldn't be a failure if they decided to keep football at the center, keep that true to football feeling, keep that skill-based feel that goes all the way back to the beginning of PES they've always had. If they decided to put that at the forefront, they would still be successful without a doubt. But just because apparently they feel they're going to make X amount more, they've totally sold their soul to the devil, if you will. And because of that, you then turn to these ratty players that recognize that they could play good football and choose not to for the sake of a win that really means nothing. If you're not going to play football the right way, it would be the equivalent of having a real life game, getting your butt kicked, and instead of training harder, instead of trying to improve, and then you earn your right to be in these games and win these games and so on and so forth, you decide to cheat. Whether it's breaking your opponent's legs, right? Purposely making sure that they play with less players. I don't know. Whatever equivalence you could come up with that equals what Smart Assist does for these players. And the other brutally, overly AI-assisted nonsense that they have. Whatever you could come up with that's equivalent to that. It wouldn't be satisfying, right? Because you didn't truly win. You know you were the worst player. You know that you didn't deserve the victory. And so these rats are truly the worst of the worst of people. I mean, that is 100% a loser's mentality, right? If you're going to compete like that in a game, I would hate to see how the rest of your life looks like. That's why I always say what I do when I confront these rats. It is 100% true. I'm not speaking out of nowhere, just randomly calling them losers. The stuff that I say isn't just out of anger. It's just the truth, because you can easily see what they're doing in this game and see that they're total losers because they don't want to truly put in the work to be good footballers in a football simulator. So that's where, whether you point at Konami, the player base, at least the ratty player base, which is, there's a lot of them in eFootball, or combination. No matter how you break it down, that is what's ruining the game. Konami adding this stuff in to help these nonsense players with no skill, and then the amount of players that decide, I don't care how good this football game is, I don't want to play football for the sake of winning, which is the only thing I could assume it would be. Because the football is definitely not enjoyable. They turn it to not even football, right? If you got Hullett, R9, Van Dyke, whoever, Pele, anybody, and they watched what this game could be as you play as them on the sticks versus what these rats turn it to, right? What do you think they would say? They would look at the nonsense and go, what is this? Like, I see someone with my name that looks like me running around, but that's not how I play. That's not even football. What was that? So we know that despite all this, these rat losers aren't going to change. They're going to be there. We know that as of now, Konami has no reason, like we know the reason why they should take Smart Assist and the other nonsense out of the game and really hone in on the great things that they have that make this game, fun to play. But that's not going to change the path that they're going on, right? Because they've decided this is how they make the most money. So where does that leave us, the true football players, the true players that understand and love this game because of its ties to PES, which always stayed true to the game, always was skill-based, right? That brings out the magic in football that made us all love this game in the first place and that drew us to play football on the sticks, right? What can we do? Well, I'll tell you what we can't do if we ever want to change. We can't be quiet. We can't hide this nonsense from the public view to where more and more people react and more the numbers get higher and higher of people that are sick of this nonsense. Because if we do that, of course Konami will never change. They've made up their mind, and there would be nothing that shows them otherwise, right? Now, I believe that there's enough players that put enough money into this game that are true footballers, that are skilled footballers, that if they all spoke up, if the true numbers were shown, Konami would start to get scared that they're going to lose those skilled players, as opposed to being scared of losing these low-level players that they put all this nonsense in the game for. And once that occurs, that's when you start getting changes that we all want. How do I know this? I witnessed it and was a part of it with EAFC. As bad as that game is, believe it or not, FC25 was far worse than FC26. And EA Sports for years didn't even acknowledge the player base. They were the biggest, the most successful, they were rich. All they cared about, just like Konami and many of these companies, same with Strikers at UFL, all they care about is the money. And so they had no reason to listen until so many people spoke up and people started taking action. Less packs were being sold because so many negative things were being said. Less players were buying the game late because that casual fan base, player base, whatever you want to call it, that adds up to be a lot of money too. Less players were buying the game later, right? And so it got to the point where that green number was dwindling down. And that scares the suits upstairs that are part of these companies. And guess what happens then? They eventually get so scared they go, we have to respond and make this player base happy. We have to change popular opinion. And then you start to see things change that we all want, as opposed to Konami saying, here's what you get, now play and give us your money anyway. That's what's going on in eFootball, and that's what EA Sports did for years. So for all the players that want this game to be as good as it can be, that want to play true football, as we should in a football simulator, what we have to do is twofold. First, we have to be loud and share all this nonsense to make sure that more and more people see this and share their outrage. So that Konami, when they do their research, they do their surveys, they have their people come out and see what popular opinion is, they can see exactly how people truly feel about all this trash. Then we have to share how good this game could be. We have to share the beautiful football that you can play. We have to share what it's like when you're not facing this nonsense, to show how much support playing the game that way gets. If every player does those two things, which both revolve around speaking up, even if you don't have a channel or any type of streaming that you do, you can still share on your socials, little video clips, post tagging efootball and Konami. If we do these things, without a doubt, we will eventually turn this game around, and Konami will be our bitch. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Please like and subscribe. Peace out.